It's Black Teacher Matters, y'all, and I am your host, Abdel Shakur, and this is the podcast where we talk about what matters to black teachers, particularly the teachers that influence me or I've worked with. And I'm turning my work a little late today, fam. I'm not going to tell you my cat ate my homework or my Chromebook wouldn't charge, but I will say that this episode is worth the wait. Hopefully, you saw the first two episodes with one of my most influential teachers, the revolutionary educator, Hadari Davis. I got one more for you where he talks about the educators who shaped his vision, particularly his mother, Loroylin Davis. But this episode has really been on my mind since the passing of Dr. Robert McKnight, who was the head of Berkeley High School's Black Studies Department. For many years, I had a chair in my room with these words: college graduate seat. And kids would always bug me to sit there, and I would say, someday, someday. I first encountered that sign back in 1992 when I walked in Mr. McKnight's classroom. He spoke with a preacher's cadence, big vocabulary, big energy, big warmth, big toothy smile, big generosity. And the more I got to know him, the more I understood that the chair was not about exclusion, but vision. That seat was not just about showing up, but enduring to hold the place for the next generation. I've talked often about having so many excellent black teachers at Berkeley High School, and Mr. McKnight was instrumental in putting that all together. He stepped in as a department head the year before I came to high school, after the passing of the founder of the department, Dr. Richard Navies. Mr. McKnight was not only kept the lights on, he ran a vibrant department with a strong sense of community, a place where young people like myself and young teachers like Mr. Davis could flourish. So all love and respect to Dr. Robert McKnight. I appreciate you. Okay, so imagine it's second grade and your parents have moved from Palo Alto, California to Ithaca, New York. You're a California kid, new to the East Coast, trying to fit in, trying to make friends. So maybe you show out in class a little bit, cut up, as one might do. The only hitch is the woman at the front of the class, the teacher, she's also your mom. And she's also an excellent teacher. And she don't play. So Hadari Davis talks about the influence of his mom, the legendary educator, Loroylin Davis. I hope you enjoy. I try, part of this is like tracking the lineage of your perspective on teaching, on learning. And so this just makes me think, like, when you talk about all these things, you talk about helping students to think critically, arming them with the vocabulary and the critical thinking, and, having these connections to scholars and learning. And I know you grew up in Palo Alto and then on the East Coast too. Is there, as you think about your own lineage, like, who are some of the major figures for you that helped you develop the way you think about teaching?
Well, my mom was a teacher. So she was my teacher, second, third, and fourth grade. I, not homeschool, but actually in a public school. She was my second, third, and fourth grade teacher. And so she taught me.
What was that like?
It's hard to contextualize it for people who haven't experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
But to say it's a tradition in my family.
Hey, first of all, what's your mom's name?
Loroylin Davis. Loroylin Davis. There's probably black teachers out there and administrators and just people in general out there who were in this woman's class because she taught for like 50 years. But yeah, my mom definitely taught me how to teach. I spent a lot of time, after school. I wound up in my mom's classroom waiting for her to finish. So I spent a lot of after school time in school. My mom started an organization with three other black teachers called Young, Gifted, and Black. And so our after school program was to go and study Black history. So that was all the way through high school.
We are YGB, and it don't stop. Black history, and it won't stop. Phyllis Sweet D2 Bamuti. Phyllis Sweet D2 Bamuti. Say it. Phyllis Sweet D2 Bamuti. Again. Phyllis Sweet D2 Bamuti.
What was your mom's class like?
When I moved from Palo Alto, I moved to Ithaca, New York. I skipped kindergarten and went straight to first grade. And when I got to New York, I was in second grade. My mom was my teacher. She made me call her Mrs. Davis. She wouldn't let me call her mom. At least not in school hours. I was not allowed to call her mom.
Did she clear that up with you before you got into class, or was it after a little while in class?
No. This was as we were going into the thing. She was like, okay, if I'm going to be your teacher and I'm teaching these other kids, like they're calling me Mrs. Davis, you got to call me Mrs. Davis. And you can't be asking for any special whatever, because I'm going to give the other kids what I give you. She was like a teacher, you know, she was a teacher who was my mom. I can't say she never broke face. You know what I mean? I do remember getting a spanking when she said time out on this teacher thing, come here, and she wore me out and then put me back in class. I do remember that happening.
Wait. So was this, do you remember what you did? Was it like something that you just, you flipped up and did something, or was it like something you had been building up to?
No, moving from California to New York was a little traumatic for me.
Hmm.
The people in New York didn't understand my way, and I didn't understand their way because I was from a different place, like everything. So part of my adapting to the new place meant that I would try on behaviors that may not have been consistent with how I was being raised, because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to have a social life. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to engage the other people who had grown up together. They had all been in kindergarten, first grade. They lived in the same neighborhood, etc. I'm coming out of nowhere. I'm just a brand new kid. So I think in the process of trying to fit in, part of fitting in was doing things that were not consistent with the expectations at home. You know what I mean? And so there will be moments where I might go too far. I mean, in that time, I had a lot of fights. Because kids didn't like me because I was a California kid. So I had got a lot of fights, picked on a lot. A lot of girls liked me. The girls really liked me. So that was another issue. For the other boys, it was a problem that the girls liked me. So it was a problem. So that's why I would end up getting in these fights. Yeah, but my mom was great. I mean, I think that she and my father probably had fears about how I would be treated in a classroom based on everything that I just described, right? I was very active kid too, like mentally active, but that could easily be, I don't know, diagnosed, right? Easily be diagnosed. But with my mom as my teacher, those diagnoses never came. All that stuff, I never really had to deal with that because I had my mom. So she hand selected my 5th grade teacher. You know what I mean? Like things were, until I got to middle school, honestly, I didn't really have no school problems other than my mom. That was the only school problem, but it was like a great benefit. It was everything. It was everything. Yeah, it definitely, she had a big stamp on who I became. Sure. So I don't know. I remember writing lines. I remember writing my first poem in her class. I remember that. I remember I wrote a paper on Liberia. It was the first place, and maybe it was my mom who told me this, but I just know it was the first place that I understood that school had like a curriculum that you had to study, but every now and then they would offer you a paper and you would get to choose what you were going to study. Like you would get the chance to decide what it was. And I always chose Black, like all the way through college. If I had a chance to write something and it wasn't like prescribed to me, I always went to some Black stuff. So for me, Liberia was the Black thing to write about. I wrote about Egypt, you know, like if I had a chance, if you're like, you're given whatever you want to do, just write this essay, I would always go to Blackness. And that's probably my mom pointing me in that direction. But yeah, I never wrote a paper about anything that didn't relate to us, essentially. Before that was my most impactful teacher. Before my mom, I had a teacher named Mrs. Young, who was my preschool teacher. She was a master teacher. She's a Jewish woman. Her class was so diverse, like incredibly diverse class. My mom at that time was her student or a student teacher or assistant teacher. So my mom was in my class then when I was in preschool too. She was there. But this woman was a great teacher. So I have more memories of preschool than I have of middle school. She was great, man. She used to read our dreams. We used to come and tell her our dreams, and she would write them down. She would have us draw our dreams. She would write the stories that we told. I have a whole catalog of dreams that I had when I was in preschool that are all described by me. And I'm 50. I'm 55. You know what I mean? I have things that I wrote when I was like 4 and 5, you know? Yeah, that experience was, I have photographs from that time. And when I look at the photographs, I can almost remember the day. I can almost remember the moment, which is like wild. Sometimes you see photographs, you're like, this happened? But when I see those, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the day that my dad came to school and read us books. And I remember the day, my birthday party, we celebrated in that class. I remember playing with those blocks. I remember what this classroom looked like. And that's preschool. So that's what turned me on to learning, turned me on to language, art, the power of art, the power of play, the importance of play, and sort of cultivating imagination. Yeah, when I became a teacher at Berkeley High, I had this conversation with Pedro Noguera because I didn't know what I was doing. I was freestyling. So I was like, what's the secret thing? Like, all teachers have a secret thing. What's the secret thing, bro? And he said, all you need to do is capture their imagination, Hadari. If you can capture their imagination, you could teach them anything. And I was like, yo, it's like a super gem. It was a super gem. So by the time I was teaching at the high, I was wearing like hip hop clothes. And so I would shop for a Pele Pele. It wasn't for me. I didn't really care about Pele Pele, but I knew the students loved that. I know the students would care about it. If I wore a FUBU, I know the students would be tripping off of it. I wasn't. I didn't really care. But I knew that I would capture their imagination. I totally understood that. If I did some hip hop shit, if KRS-One came to my class, I knew if I had KRS-One come to my class, I could ride that out for the whole year. And I did. And I did. Capture their imagination was like, it's like magic advice for me.
Big thank you to Hadari Davis for his time and attention and wisdom. Thanks to my students who encourage me to cultivate my own creativity so I can engage with their tremendous power. Thanks to the Shakur kids who are getting older yet helping me stay young. Thanks to Mrs. Shakur who don't play about loving her family. And thanks to you, dear listener, for finding out what matters to Black teachers. If you enjoyed what you heard, share this thing. And I'll see you next time. All right.